The first project I want to talk to you about today is Ssense. Both of these are very recent projects. So Ssense is a luxury commercial e-commerce website that is based off of Montreal, Canada. And they basically sell luxury fashion designer items, and their clients are executives, celebrities, CEOs, and people like that. So Ssense actually has personal stylists allocated for each of their clients so that they can make their shopping experience better. So the problem that I was trying to solve at Ssense is that Ssense at that time was expanding into Europe, and their old ERP system that they use internally throughout Ssense to manage all of their orders is legacy, and it cannot handle big changes. It's 10 years old, and my goal there, my task there, is to redesign the entire ERP system from scratch. And while doing that, finding all the problems. My role there, I was a sole owner of the entire project. I was leading the entire design procedure and figuring out who to talk to and who are the stakeholders, figuring out who are the users, first of all, that use the ERP system, because it's humongous. It's something like Salesforce, right? And there are so many other teams at Ssense that use it. And because the application is so big, not a single person knows how the entire ERP system works. I reported directly to the director of product, and I worked with these 8 different teams that use the ERP system. I coordinated directly with their team leads, negotiated design decisions, and so on. So, for example, the teams include like the fraud team, customer success team, logistics, return, distribution. They all use this order management system. Some of the challenges that I ran into while I was doing this project was initially, in the very first few weeks, I was thinking buy versus build. Building an entire ERP system is a very huge task. Even though Ssense is not a startup, I still felt that there are very good solutions out there. There's Oracle, Intuit, Salesforce, SAP that do exactly this and provide exactly this kind of solution. So why not consider buying? Because their tech teams are not as sophisticated as a tech company, I would say. So I was trying to persuade this idea. I started off by doing some calculations, numbers with the competitive analysis, with the help of my manager, the director of product. She really thought that output was interesting, and she took that to talk to higher ups and executives. Unfortunately, I didn't have the power to go directly and talk to them, but it actually ended up taking them 1 year to decide that they actually want to buy instead of building, after I have done everything. So I knew from the start that I needed to make sure that whatever I do is useful in both decisions, whatever they make. And I can show you later on how I made it useful in both cases. There was no design system for the internal Ssense tools, and that's a problem. So there will not be any consistency if we don't have one. So my manager and I ended up hiring another designer who I worked on building the design system with. We based it off of material design, and there was a lot more customization we needed to do because material design is more mobile first, and Ssense has a lot of configurations and control that we need to add. So I also talk about that. And lastly, there was no cohesion between these 8 teams that I was working with, because they all use the ERP system differently. They use different parts of it. No one uses the whole thing. Their priorities are different. What they think is the biggest problem in the old system do not align. And that's why, to solve this problem, I ended up doing 3 series of 3 workshops where I had 20 to 25 people attend from all of these 8 teams, where I go through a series of exercises. So my process for this project especially was starting off with empathy interviews. There I learned about like what are the different users. From each call they'll give me a few more names of who I could talk to, because there's no one telling me what to do, or a structure out there that's mapped out that shows like who is using this system, like who's involved, and things like that. So I have that, and also just observing, asking them about their day-to-day work life. What are the things what do they do, and so that I can eventually map out the workflow of this gigantic product. From the empathy interviews, I also summarized these different people that I was talking to into 3 personas of users that I wanted to cater towards the new product. I also had to step aside and map out the order flow, because in the old ERP system, sorry, this could look scary. If you can see my mouse, this part is just the order status, which looks very simple. It's like a 6-step thing that tells you where the order is, in which stage it is in. But it is not that simple, because none of the users trust that. So I actually had to, oh no, not that. I actually had to step aside and map out the order flow to make sure that it is conveyed more intuitively in the design, which I will show you how I did. And then with the workshops, I started off with a problem discovery workshop, then a scenario mapping workshop, because that is a stepping stone to the journey mapping workshop. I will go through those as well. And finally, I summarize all of those with the main themes and patterns that I identified from the research. From there, I diverge into multiple different wireframes, so multiple different ideas that came out of all of these research, and brainstorm them. And from there, I did several quick rounds of testing, going back and making changes, testing again, and improving the design. And in the middle, you will also see that the design system is used. And finally, how do I measure success of this new product? What are the metrics I'm using? I already talked about this old system. So what you're seeing here is a very zoomed out version. Sorry, I couldn't fit it all in. So this is also one of the artifacts that came out of the empathy interviews. I actually redlined every single feature and button that is in the old system and how is it being used, because none of it is intuitive. if you just use it like what makes sense, the system will break. So there's a lot of unwritten rules that the users are using in order to get by with the old system. So I needed to write them down because I wanted to see if there's any new needs that arise and that are needed to be built in the new system. So for example, let me read one of them. So where it says here price, it says before the order is locked by the warehouse or after it's shipped. So that means that until there are several different conditions and mathematical formulas that require the user to guess before they can edit a certain part of the system. And sorry, I forgot to mention, so this is a whole one-page system where all the information is in and the features are sprinkled throughout. So there are several concerns here. There's many different types of users that are using the system, and that is a security issue. We don't need to show all information to every single type of user. So and there are a lot more things that I highlighted, but let me keep moving on to the next. So these are the 3 different types of users that I want to cater the new design to. So Ahmed is a general user, someone who uses about 20% of the ERP system. So it's straightforward, and you can observe here that all of these users have 5 to 7 different applications open. These are all the different apps that are open while doing any of their tasks. And they have to cater to, if it's a personal stylist, they have to cater to thousands of different clients every day. And if they're late or if they miss something, it is directly a bad experience for the client, and therefore Ssense is losing revenue. So that's why it's super important that this ERP system is very efficient for any of these users. Another type of user is an expert user, someone like Alexandra. She is in the fraud team, and she uses the most amount of the ERP system. She uses more than 50% of the application. And someone like her really likes to have control over the application. So even though the old legacy system has bad UX patterns or something that's convoluted in terms of the workflow, she taught herself how to use that, and she taught herself to put that into her muscle memory, and she doesn't want change. So she wants to have control over what she's working on her tools. So I need to make sure that all of that is conveyed into the applications, into the new design, I mean. And the third type of user is Laura. She is like the team manager. She cares more about like the team performance and metrics, how well the productivity is in her team of associates. So something like a dashboard will be really useful to her, where they're automatically calculated and she can see the outputs. And here you can see that all of these users have an average of 6 to 7 applications that are open at any given point of time. So the first workshop I started off with, which is the problem discovery workshop with the 8 different teams. I started off with the feedback grid. which turned out to have one quadrant in particular that is the largest, that is needs to change section. What are all the different problems? And therefore, I took it one step further and did an affinity mapping exercise with them, where they will just group similar things together and then name each group. And finally, the interesting thing that happened was when we were doing the voting. So we had about 20 to 25 people from these 8 teams, and the top voted problems. So the votes are for what is the most impactful area that we can redesign first, so that it will give the most amount of results that are related to the KPI that you're looking for, like revenue, the number of increase of clients, and things like that. So again, those things did not align. The most voted item was not agreed upon with some of the teams, and there were some friendly arguments that came about, which were great because that's when they finally understood why that was important for the other team, even though like their team never uses that feature or anything in between, and we came to a good compromise. And from there, the next workshop I did was a scenario mapping workshop. I start off with the second row, which is doing. So I asked them, what do you do? Just think of any different tasks that you do throughout your day, and just write them down. And from there, I go to the top row, which is for each of those tasks, what triggers those tasks? How do you start it off? Is it from an email, a Slack, or a Zendesk message, or something else, or a phone call, or customer service? How does it start, and then where do you end it off? What's the last thing you will do before you end it off? So I got these little segments of workflows, and also while they're doing these things, I ask them, how are you feeling and thinking? Because I will learn about the user behavior. And it's important to know that because users will never tell you 100% exactly what is happening. They might miss a few things. And my job as a designer is to read between those lines and figure out if there's anything missing. So don't worry, this is zoomed out. I will show you a zoomed in version. This is the final deep dive into the journey mapping. I need this because I need to know where the pain points are, where the new ideas to try are. And that's a very good transition from here to go into the wireframes. So I zoomed into a very tiny section of the journey mapping. I have 6 different notes here, which is the first one, what triggers? I think in this laptop, it's just like, it's making everything super blurry. Like even I can't read it. I don't know if you can.
Yeah, I was about to say, so if you're in Figma, there's actually a way to zoom in. So I think you can full screen the prototype next to the options button there. So if you do fit to screen, and then there's that, you see those 2 arrows pointing away from each other next to the options?
Oh,
a little bit better. Yeah. You can just tell me what's going on.
Yeah. Okay. If I was doing that in my MacBook, you could actually read it. But this is a really old laptop that belongs to my dad, so I'm traveling right now. I don't have my computer.
No worries at all. This is okay. Everything's very, very clear to me. Don't worry about it.
Awesome. So here you could see the starting triggers, the actual user actions, insights, what's happening in between the steps, how is the user feeling or thinking, pain points in pink, and opportunities and new ideas that came about while going through these workflows, and finally touch points. And touch points are when the user changes between applications, or their systems, or like phone call to the computer. And that's when the user experience need to be seamless, because that's where it breaks most often. So to summarize the research, the main themes that came about in all of these different types of exercises was that there was a need, I saw a need for automation. There was a lot of manual and tedious tasks that have been happening for all the different types of users. For example, the manager is counting the productivity and the number of tickets manually with Excel files and with some scripts that a developer has written a long time ago, which are outdated and cannot be edited because that person is no longer working. So it's not just for the manager, it's also for the associates and customer success agents, where they have to literally write down everything manually on emails, on paper, and they're not consolidated in one place. So that's one big thing. Minimalism. The old system is pretty much looking like a newspaper that's really long and has everything in one place. So there are several problems to that. It's not intuitive. As soon as you open the order page, you don't know what is wrong. You don't know where to look at, where to focus, what are the different problems. And also, it's a security issue because the security team is worried about showing all of that information for all different tiers of internal employees. And that's why the proposal is that when we have user profiles, we can compartmentalize this data into different sections, and we can pick and choose what do we show for each type of user. Making it intuitive, of course. Tracking is also kind of related to the automation, where right now all the tracking is being done manually. The tickets are not in one place. The to-dos are emailed to the associates by hand in the email each day, and they have to copy paste a lot of things. And being able to see the to-dos. If you remember the personas, they all have 6 to 7 apps on average that they have open. That means that they're getting bombarded with to-do items from all over the place, and they can miss things. And missing things is very, very bad for Ssense and the customer experience. So being able to see all the to-dos in one place in the new design would be a great start. I've done many parallel wireframes, but I'm only showing a few of them to save time. I have another project to show as well. So here you're seeing an order page with the list of items separated by fulfillment center, Europe and Canada. And for each item, you're seeing all the different actions that you can take and which status it's in, because all of these items are shipped together if they are from the same fulfillment center. And these are basically cards inside of an accordion. And then I was also experimenting this dashboard to show the to-do items from the main themes, and also tracking information for managers in the dashboard. So the first wireframe that I was working with did not have a design system, so I was in a blank page trying to take all of these pencil sketches and the ideas from journey maps and create workable wireframes so that I can keep testing them. And at the same time, I was testing a few things. I was testing color palette. I was looking at different layouts, this vertical navigation versus horizontal, and the orders. How do we show the orders? This is very similar to the old one, except it shows where you are. If you click on it, you can see this extra details box where it shows you exactly what happened, what didn't happen, what could happen next, and more details about that order, so that it is more intuitive and trustable. And from there, at that point, we were already hiring a person and started working on using material design. And these 3 slides that I'm going to show you, this is one, and the next, are zoomed in portions of the final first MVP one of the design that use material design system. So since we talked about the orders, I want to show you how I ended up showing the orders in the new design. This is a stepper component that is available in material design, but it has some customizations. So it shows you which of the steps are finished so far, and I don't know if you can see right underneath the house, it is a dotted line. So that means...
quick tip, if you hit hide on that bar, it'll just minimize. I know that thing is super annoying. There you go.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, I tried to click it before. So the dotted line is basically showing that everything at the top has already been completed, and everything in the bottom from the dotted line are the future steps. And this is being derived directly from the order mapping that I did, which is like a tree, and it's not like a single line segment. So based on what is completed, it will guess the amount, the next steps, and display those future states here. And also the information is organized in a chronological order based on the order steps. So it is a lot more intuitive, hitting the main themes again. And another thing that we talked about is like editing and prices. So we simply use the material design grid table, which has the editable cell versus a non-editable cell. So we just use that to show exactly what is editable and what is not, based off of all of these different conditions that happen. Another thing I want to talk about is navigation. So one thing that I had to do while designing, while making the design system, is that I have to write out, I guess you could say, like the philosophy or how to use a certain pattern, so that it is consistent throughout the design system. So here in this navigation, you see that there are 3 layers of navigation. There is this parent tabs, like dashboards, orders, and then there's the child tabs for the parents. And then inside a child tab, if you click on one of the child tabs, you see a horizontal list of tabs, right? So there's 1, 2, and 3 layers of navigation. So when do you use which layer? If it's not all organized in the same manner, it's again inconsistent. So to define that, I basically simplified to say that the last layer, which is the horizontal tabs, is basically like lenses. So it is a way to view the same thing in different perspectives. So the same information, like what you were seeing here is like search results, but in different perspectives or lenses. And then how I define the parent tab and the child tab is just that child tab is just smaller chunks of the parent tab. So it's very straightforward, but it is important to define those. And this is just one example of how I define the components of what I'm putting into the design system. Another thing that was there in the old design is logs, which are unreadable and unintuitive, but very important to be able to track down what exactly happened. And pretty much every type of user has to do this. For example, if a customer service representative is talking and the user is complaining about something that happened, they have to go back to the logs to see what happened. But unfortunately, the logs are very messy and auto-generated, and has a lot of other meta information like sandwiched into it, such that it is very unintuitive. So I simply redesigned it in a way that it looks like a messenger, where it tells you, so the log section actually has both comments and things that happen. So it actually tells you who wrote that and what is their designation and exactly when they wrote it. And it's just a lot easier to follow and track. This is the final design for just the MVP one based off of material design. I have shown you several smaller areas, but if you want to see the whole thing, you can go into my website, which you can zoom in completely. So the success metrics. Two of the main things that we really need to measure are the number of order, like after an order is canceled, if another order is created with 90% of the same product SKUs, that means there's a really big problem with the old order, that they cannot edit it at all, that they had to delete it completely and redo or recreate the order again. And that is a very big problem with the old system. And that's one of the things that we definitely need to measure if that tendency keeps happening, even though there are humongous design changes. The number of tickets raised due to permission issues or order lock issues. So this also happens 80% of the time in the old system. That is because, for example, if one of the users opens an order and accidentally edits something and forgets to save, it automatically locks the order and cannot be edited by anybody, even with a high seniority of level, unless they're in the exact same team and it's the direct manager of that person. And there are other permission issues based off of like where the order status is. If one shipping happened but the warehouse didn't receive it, it changes the permission rules, and these rules are not written anywhere. So there are a lot of tickets raised due to that. So looking and measuring those number of tickets is important. Usage of logs. Right now with the old system, because the logs are unintuitive, they're not being used. Logs and comments section is not being used as often, and therefore they're using Slack, they're using Zendesk, they're using email, they're just talking to the neighbor if they're nearby. Because of that, none of those other interactions are being documented in the order itself, which is very important, because if someone claims that happened and it's not documented, they just have to issue a refund, which is then a negative revenue for Ssense. the number of clicks from the dashboard that lead to the order page. So the hypothesis is that the order page, it tells you some of the to-do items in what to do, so that you don't even have to use the search or filters to go there. You can go directly from the dashboard and go to your items and click into them. That's the assumption. But unless we measure this, the number of clicks that actually lead to the order page, we don't know if that hypothesis worked. Finally, this is like the overall metric, the number of tickets complete, the ticket completion rate by all of their associates, the average ticket completion rate. That relates directly, a ratio that relates directly to customer satisfaction and Ssense revenue.